you may have come across company names like Afterpay, Klarna, QuadPay, Sezzle, PayBright, and many more because they seem to be everywhere when you are shopping online. In this video, we're going to take a look at what buy now, pay later companies are, what exactly they offer, namely very short-term 0% interest loans, how they make money doing this, and a number of reasons why you may want to avoid them. Collectively, these companies are known as buy now, pay later companies, or BNPL for short. Now, not all buy now, pay later offers are 0% interest or short term. There are many providers who offer longer term financing, some with 0% interest, but a smorgasbord of other fees that effectively amount to a hefty cost of borrowing, and others with clearly spelled out interest rates. But one of the more popular buy now, pay later offers is when you get to an online checkout, and instead of seeing a total cost of $100 for whatever you're buying, you're offered the option of making 4 payments of $25 with 0 interest and no extra costs for doing so, as long as nothing goes wrong. Now, these buy now, pay later companies are separate from the retailer that you're shopping at. So the first question is, how do these buy now, pay later companies make money if they're offering 0% interest loans? Well, the business model is actually nothing new. In fact, it's hundreds of years old. You can Google factoring accounts receivable to learn more, but you should just know that it's been modernized for the e-commerce world, and here's how it works. When you want to buy something for, say, $100 from an online retailer, they might offer you the option of paying for it over 4 payments of $25. But the buy now, pay later company buys that $100 payment for maybe $94. So the retailer takes a 6% haircut in this case, and they're done. They are no longer a part of the transaction. But we'll come back to that later. From your perspective, you bought a $100 item, and if you make all 4 payments of $25 on time, you've paid no interest. But from the buy now, pay later company's perspective, they've given out a loan of $94, and they're expected to get that back plus $6 in interest over 6 weeks. Why 6 weeks, you ask? Well, you might pay $25 at the time of transaction, leaving you with 3 more biweekly payments, so a total borrowing period of 6 weeks. Now, to convert this to an annual percentage rate, we take $6, we divide that into the principal of $94, which gives us 0.0638. We then multiply this by 365 days in a year, and then divide by the length of the loan, which in this case is 42 days. This gives us 0.5547, and we multiply that by 100 to convert into a percentage, and we get an APR of 55.47%. Not a bad rate of interest to be earning for the buy now, pay later company. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, what do I care if I'm only paying $100 for something that was listed for sale at $100? And yes, it looks quite harmless for everyone involved so far. Okay, so let's now go back to the retailer, and remember, they took a 6% haircut. And some people would argue that, that's just another cost of doing business. After all, companies that make buy now, pay later available do report increased shopping cart conversions. A conversion is when someone who has added something to their cart online then successfully completes the transaction instead of abandoning the cart. So a conversion is when someone actually buys what they put in their cart. They also report higher sales, higher AOVs, average order values, and so on. So these are all good things for the retailer. However, let's take a deeper look. There are essentially 4 main ways that a retailer can accept payments: cash, debit, credit, and now buy now, pay later. And these 4 different modes of payment have different costs. Accepting cash and debit are effectively the same. A debit card transaction has a fairly low transaction cost that the debit network providers charge. And if you were physically in a store and could pay cash, there still are costs associated with accepting cash for a merchant. Now, you might think that it's free for the business to accept cash, but there are some costs, such as the labor required to count the tills at the end of shifts, and the cost of counterfeit bills being used, for example. So if you're a business owner and you accept a $100 bill and it's counterfeit, when you go to your bank to deposit the funds, they're going to say, oh, this isn't $100, it's $0 because it's fake, it's not money. And so that effectively becomes a cost. In any case, cash and debit are both overall relatively low-cost ways to accept payments, but not free. Let's just call it 0.5% of the transaction value on average for demonstrative purposes. But accepting a credit card can be quite expensive. It might average 2 to 3%, and sometimes more of a transaction's value. And part of the reason for that are all those credit card reward programs. In fact, the fancier the reward program attached to your credit card is, the higher the fees that the merchant has to pay to accept that form of payment. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Depending on what country you live in, merchants may not be allowed to charge a surcharge on transactions where it costs them more money to accept your payment, namely credit cards. That means the item they sell can't be marked up, even though accepting your credit card might cost them a lot more than accepting cash or debit. And what this means is that lower income households might be subsidizing the rewards programs of higher wealth households. Now, that's not an angle most people are aware of, but let's explain why this is true. In order to make a profit as a business, your revenues have to exceed your costs. And if your costs go up, merchants can and often will increase prices. And if more and more people use credit cards with rich rewards programs, that increases the costs for a merchant, and they may increase prices for everyone, even the people paying with cash or debit or no-frills credit cards that incur lower costs for the merchant. So, because everyone is paying the same price for the item, but only some people are getting the premium credit card reward points, the ones that tend to only be available to people with higher incomes, that means the wealthy are getting subsidized. Now, a side note, sometimes you'll see stores with a little sign that says something like 2% cash discount. And that's because they may be allowed to offer a discount on a price for cash, but they may not be allowed to offer a surcharge on a credit card transaction because that might violate their merchant agreements with the companies that provide the payment infrastructure. This is actually a really big issue around the world. In Canada, there was a competition tribunal that examined the issue of companies like Visa and MasterCard and their power to force merchants to accept cards with higher fees, like premium reward cards. I'll include some links with details on that in the video description if you want to learn more. But a simple way to find out more is, the next time you're in a local business, ask the owner if there are any particular credit cards they don't like accepting. And I'm willing to bet they'll have a list of cards they can rattle off at the top of their head that they are loath to accept, but have to. So, if cash and debit transactions have low costs for merchants, again, using 0.5% as a number, but it might actually even be lower than that. And if credit cards can be 2 to 3%, what impact does a buy now, pay later option add to the mix? Remember, if a buy now, pay later option costs maybe 6%, and that's not abnormal, would that increase prices? It's quite possible. Now, offsetting that is the higher sales volumes, which can help alleviate some of the pressure. But with razor-thin profit margins, it's fairly easy to see how the high costs could translate into higher prices for everyone. Now, beyond that, while some buy now, pay later companies are also starting to offer rewards to users, the more mature credit card reward programs may offer better rewards to you. So if you could pay off your entire purchase using your credit card and getting the points and maybe extended warranty coverage, etc., might be more attractive. And not that I'm advocating carrying balances on credit cards, but mathematically, if you were to pay off a credit card purchase over 2 months, your actual interest charge might be relatively low, and you might be getting that extended warranty coverage. So let's just do a super quick example. If we bought that $100 item and our credit card's APR is 25%, then when we calculate the daily interest rate, which is 25% or 0.25, divided by 365, which gives us 0.0006849, if we paid off our $100 balance in 6 weeks, that's 42 days, and our average daily balance will essentially be $50 during that time, then to calculate the amount of interest that we would have paid, we multiply 0.0006849 times 42 days times $50, and we get a whopping $1.44 in interest. Now, like I said, that's a quick and dirty calculation, but it's going to be pretty close. If that $1.44 gets you the added warranty and other coverage that you get with credit card purchases, That might seem like a better option, especially if you feel you might be at risk of not making your buy now, pay later payment obligations, because if you do, you've got big fees to pay in most cases. Now, to be clear, because buy now, pay later tends to be offered through merchants selling very discretionary items, my recommendation is, maybe you try the old school save now, pay later method and only make those purchases if you have the money already. Then use your debit card or use a credit card for the purchase and pay it off right away. Now, if you need to finance a purchase for a purely discretionary item, whether it be through a buy now, pay later provider or carrying even a small balance on your credit card, that's something that you want to avoid if you can. Obviously, there are some extreme situations where that might not be possible for people, but there are certainly a lot of consumers who are buying things they don't need using borrowed funds. Now, all of what we've talked about so far assumes you don't miss payments. If you miss any buy now, pay later payments, then the late fees, when converted into an APR, might even make your credit card blush. And just to put it all into perspective, the delinquency rate for all consumer loans in the US has been hovering around 2 to 3%, according to the Federal Reserve. But according to the Australian Securities and Investments Commission in Australia, which seems to be the hotbed of buy now, pay later companies, in the most recent 12-month period they looked at, 21% of buy now, pay later users missed at least one payment. And further, the missed payment fees as a percentage of fees coming from the consumer is about 44%. So missed payments are big business for many buy now, pay later companies. And beyond all that, if you come to an online checkout and you're trying to think about the merchant and the cost that they incur, if it makes no difference to you, the preference is debit, then credit, then buy now, pay later in terms of the least cost to the most cost for the merchant. Hit the thumbs up if you like this video, and I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel for more content about all things money and personal finance. And I will see you in the next video.